Have you ever felt an unexplainable emptiness, until one day an animal crosses your path and changes everything? In the bitter cold heart of a Montana winter, Sarah never imagined that an injured lioness would knock at her door, quite literally, bringing with her a wounded cub and a weight from the past Sarah had buried deep within herself. Outside, the wind howled fiercely, carrying the metallic scent of fresh snow, while the wooden porch creaked beneath her feet as she gripped a steaming cup of coffee. Dawn painted the sky with hues of purple and blue, blanketing the world in heavy silence. Suddenly, the sound of branches snapping echoed through the forest. From the trees emerged a lioness, her golden fur streaked with mud and snow, gently carrying a barely breathing cub. Have you ever met the gaze of an animal that seemed to truly recognize you? That lioness, later named Stella, fixed her eyes on Sarah with a look that unmistakably said, "I know you." But how could that even be possible? Sarah's daughter, Emily, 12 years old, appeared at the door, eyes wide but not screaming. Despite the fear, the girl whispered, "She won't hurt us, Mom." The air smelled of wet pines, and the calm radiating from that wild creature was almost otherworldly, as if she'd crossed mountains just to get there. Stella gently placed the cub in the snow, a low whimper escaping her throat. The cub, with a crooked paw and a trembling body, seemed too small to survive. Sarah, who'd once rehabilitated lions years ago, felt her heart tighten. Her instincts screamed to act, but her hands shook with memories she'd rather forget. Picture this for a second: a lioness, an injured cub, and a woman who swore she'd never touch an animal again. What would you do? Emily stepped closer, her coat brushing against the snow, and touched her mother's arm. "You've seen this lioness before, haven't you?" The girl had a way of seeing beyond, like she could read the soul of things. Sarah swallowed hard, remembering Stella, an orphan cub she'd rescued years ago at the rehabilitation center. Back then, Sarah was full of life, saving animals with a smile that's long gone. But everything changed when Michael, her 8-year-old son, died in a car accident. She was at the center, tending to a bear cub, when it happened. The guilt consumed her. After that, she locked up the barn and vowed to abandon animals forever. Who hasn't felt like running away is easier than facing the pain? The scent of damp earth rose from the ground, mingled with the faint smell of the lioness's wet fur. Stella didn't move, just watched, as if trusting Sarah to understand her silent plea. You know when a sound pulls you straight back to the past? Every whimper from the cub brought back the pain Sarah had buried. She wanted to turn away, but Emily's hopeful eyes held her there. "We can help, Mom," the girl said, with a certainty that defied the cold. Sarah looked at Stella, who took a step back, as if fully entrusting the cub to her. It felt like a sign from the universe, whispering, "You're not done with your mission." But how could she care for an injured cub without reopening wounds she could barely touch? Night fell, and the wind cut like blades. Sarah carefully lifted the cub, feeling the faint warmth of its body. "Let's get to the barn," she said, her voice hoarse. Emily ran ahead, the sound of her boots crunching through the snow echoing in the darkness. The barn, with its scent of old hay and damp wood, felt like a tomb of memories. Sarah laid the cub on a blanket while Stella stayed outside, her eyes glowing in the dim light. Ever felt the weight of a moment that seems bigger than you? Sarah felt it, but the fear of failing again gripped her chest. Suddenly, the sound of tires crunching snow signaled trouble. Sarah peered through the barn window and saw the neighbor Bill Landry and Sheriff Miller stepping out of a pickup truck, rifles in hand. The air reeked of diesel and tension, and Stella let out a low growl but didn't advance. Bill, with his crooked hat, shouted, "Sarah, this is madness. A lioness in your yard?" The sheriff, calmer but firm, gripped his rifle tightly. "Explain why you didn't call the authorities, Sarah." She took a deep breath, her heart pounding like a drum. "She's not dangerous. Trust me." But trust was a rare commodity there. Since Michael's death, the neighbors saw her as a recluse, a shadow of the woman who once saved animals with passion. Who hasn't felt like they've lost the respect of those who matter? Emily stepped in front of the lioness, her eyes blazing with courage. "She just wants to save her cub." The girl's voice trembled but rang out like thunder. Stop and picture this, a little girl standing up to armed men for a wild animal. Can you believe it? Sarah, inspired by her daughter, stepped forward. I'll take care of them. No one shoots. Stella, as if understanding, lowered her head, allowing Sarah to approach the cub. The trust between them was almost sacred, a thread cutting through the cold. The sheriff shook his head. You've got 24 hours to sort this out, Sarah, or we're back. The men's flashlights faded into the snow, leaving a heavy silence. How would Sarah protect Stella and the cub with the sheriff's deadline looming? Inside the barn, the floor creaked under Sarah's feet, and the scent of old hay filled the air. She laid the dot who'd helped her in the old days. The sound of Carter's truck arriving brought relief, like the first ray of sun after a blizzard. Carter brought a clinking medical kit, and under the barn's dim light, they examined the cub. His paw had a congenital deformity, making it hard for him to walk. But what shocked them was another discovery, a military-grade tracker, the size of a coin, embedded under his skin. Who puts this in a cub? Carter muttered, frowning. Ever thought about what an animal might carry without anyone knowing? Emily, crouched beside the cub, stroked his head. We'll call you Hope, she said, her smile lighting up the barn. The girl, who wore a leg brace due to a birth condition, saw in the cub a mirror of her own struggle. Pure compassion, you know? Sarah looked at her daughter and felt a lump in her throat. It was as if Hope, frail as he was there to teach resilience. Carter cleaned the wounds and stabilized the paw while Sarah assisted, her hands trembling but steady. For the first time in years, the barn was a place of healing again. The scent of antiseptic mingled with hay, and the soft whimpers of Hope felt like a promise of life. But the military tracker raised dangerous questions. Who was behind it? And how could Sarah protect Hope with the town on edge? The dawn light slipped through the barn's slats, painting golden stripes on the straw-covered floor. The smell of coffee mixed with antiseptic lingered as Sarah and Carter watched Hope sleep. The relief of seeing the cub stable was immense, but the tracker weighed heavily on Sarah's mind. Who would do this to an animal? And why did Stella bring the cub to her? Ever get the feeling there's a bigger secret than you can grasp? Jack Harrison, a former assistant at the rehabilitation center, showed up at the barn unannounced. He said he'd heard about the lioness through town and wanted to help, but his eyes darted, and his hands fidgeted in his pockets. I've seen things like this, he mumbled, pointing to the tracker. Animal traffickers use them to track valuable prey. The word traffickers hit like a rock. Ever had that shiver of doubt about someone who seemed trustworthy? Emily, flipping through an old photo album of her mom's, stopped short. Look at this, Mom. She held up a faded picture, Jack, younger, at the rehabilitation center, months before Michael's death. But Jack swore he'd only arrived in town after the tragedy. Sarah's memory surged, dragging back the trauma. Why would he lie? What aren't you telling us, Jack? She asked, her voice firm but her heart racing. He hesitated, the silence louder than any words. The scent of straw felt suffocating, and Stella's eyes, still at the door, seemed to judge Jack. Stop and think about it. A man who knows traffickers, a photo that contradicts his story, and a lioness who seems to know too much. The truth was close, but the town was already stirring outside, ready to decide Stella and Hope's fate. The community hall was packed, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and the nervous murmur of townsfolk. Chairs creaked as everyone settled, their gazes split between fear and suspicion. Sarah, with Emily by her side, felt the weight of the entire town on her shoulders. Stella and Hope were safe in the barn, but for how long? Ever been in a situation where it felt like everyone was against you? Sarah felt it, but something inside her, maybe courage, maybe stubbornness, kept her standing. Bill Landry, his voice hoarse, opened the meeting. A loose lioness is a danger. And that cub? Who says it's not a threat? Half the room clapped, but others, like old Mrs. Clara, who'd seen Sarah save a baby deer, shook their heads. The divide was clear: protect the lions or banish them. Sheriff Miller banged on the table, calling for order. Sarah, explain why you think these animals deserve a chance. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding like rain on a tin roof. Stella trusted me. She brought hope because she knew I could help. That's conservation, that's giving a second chance. Emily, her eyes shining, added, hope is like me. He just needs a chance to fight. Stop and feel the weight of it, a child teaching adults about resilience. Can you believe it? The crowd fell silent, but tension rose when Jack Harrison walked in, his face pale. He looked ready to speak but hesitated. The sheriff's deadline was running out, and Sarah glanced at Emily, then at the door, as if Stella might appear to defend them. The sun rose over Montana, painting the sky orange, while the scent of fresh dew hung over the barn. Sarah, Emily, and Dr. Carter watched Hope take his first shaky steps, his crooked paw stronger each day. Stella rested nearby, her eyes calm, as if she knew her mission was complete. You know when everything feels like it's falling into place, like a gift from the universe? That's what Sarah felt, watching mother and cub together, her own soul healing. At the meeting, Jack confessed, he'd worked with traffickers years ago but helped dismantle their network after Michael's death, seeking redemption. The town, moved by Emily's courage and Sarah's resilience, voted to protect the lions, creating a local sanctuary. The bond between humans and animals overcame fear, proving trust can change everything. Who hasn't longed for a second chance to fix the past? Sometimes, the greatest teachers have 4 paws, showing us compassion, resilience, and maternal instinct. Sarah learned this from Stella, Emily from Hope, and the town from both. So, have you ever had an animal change your life? Share it with us in the comments. If this story warmed your heart, the next video YouTube suggests will move you even more. Don't miss it.